Hey everyone, welcome to the Tuesday Night Anna Alexis Podcast. I am so excited to get a chance to be sharing this evening with you and just getting a chance to kind of like dive into essentially what's next for us and what is that. For me, for those of you that are just joining and this is your very first podcast, this podcast is designed to help women who are not as clear, who they lack a little bit of clarity and direction or confidence, and they know there's something within them. They know that there's that something like rustling where they're like, there's got to be more than like what I'm doing right now. And they've got all of those hopes and dreams and everything that they've always had. But somewhere along the way, they thought of them as like not being important, or they'll get to them later. And now years have gone by and they haven't. And so this podcast is for people who have realized, like, I set quite a few things down along the way. I'm tired of doing that. I'd like to pick those back up. I'd like to start investing in myself and in my dream and in my calling, because ultimately the thing that's on your brain, the thing that will not leave you alone, those ideas you have, they're there for a reason. And a lot of times we think like, oh, everybody's thinking of that. You know, one of the things that's been really funny in this season of our life is my husband and I, we will just, because we're with the baby a lot, and we are thinking about ideas. Oh, that'd be a good kid's book. Oh, that would be really nifty. Oh, that would be really useful in this season. Oh, I would totally love to have something like that made for me. You know, and all of these ideas are coming to us for a reason. Now, some of them, aren't as legitimate, but others of them, that might be exactly where you're supposed to be. And so on episode 14 of the Anna Alexis Podcast, what we're going to be talking about tonight is digging your roots down and pulling your weeds. And, I don't know if you guys have pulled weeds recently, but when I was a kid, I would go to help my dad. I say that in air quotes because I probably was doing like much more harm than good in the helping department. And we would go out and pull the weeds that were kind of in the yard or in the garden or wherever they were. Sometimes, I guess we didn't do it a lot, probably because he saw that I was not very good at it per this story I'm about to tell you. And he realized he did not want to invite me back. But when I was a kid and I was pulling weeds, if I ended up pulling it out and I just got the leaves and you couldn't see it anymore, I was like, I got it. Like, you can't see it. I obviously did it. And I'm going to drop some value very early on into this episode, is that you did not get them. No, ma'am. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that they're not there. And what ended up happening probably, which is why I was not invited back to help my dad pull weeds, is they were still there. And they ultimately pull back. They grow back regardless of if you just pull the leaves out, because again, the life of the weed isn't in the leaves. It isn't in the flower. It's in the roots. It's underground. It's what you can't see. And, one of the things is you kind of think about that, like, man, how much of that is true? How much of it that you think that you are knowing somebody or you're around somebody, whether it's your coworkers, your spouse, your kids, and you think, oh, I see them. They're like this. That's who they are. When really who they are, how they're feeling, everything they're going through is underground. You can't see everything that anybody is going through. We're getting about 5% of who any person is at any given time, because that's what they're choosing to show us, but that's not who they are. The life of everything, plants, people, is in the things that you cannot see. And I want to touch on that a little more, because there are things where you're like, oh, well, I can't see it. It's gone. And in a beautiful way, it's like, oh, when I think of like my grandma who passed away, I know that she still loves me. I know she's on the other side of the veil. I know that she's sending me all of this love and light and celebration. Even though I can't see it, it's still there. But how many of us, whether it's annoying ways or sad ways, in an annoying way, there's that habit that you just can't kick, but you keep kind of pulling the leaves off of it. And it grows back and you're like, oh, there you are again. But you didn't deal with the root of the issue. So of course it's going to be coming back, or even in sad ways. Well, some of the things that I struggle with, even I think the most right now in this season of my life and trying to do everything, is kind of this repeated pattern of what keeps holding you back. What's up, Bren? How are you? What keeps holding you back? When you find yourself just so frustrated because you're like, why can't I just get it together? Why can't I just get it together? And when we look at trying to pull out those weeds in our life, we've got to start to think, what is this that's there? And being able to identify it, because how many of us, we want to change, but we're unwilling to understand the things that are holding us back. We're unwilling to go underground for the things that are holding ourselves back, to really just get our hands dirty, not just in pulling the weeds, but in creating the new version of ourselves that we're proud to be, because we do that by changing the person that we are now. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm going to change everything about who I am. No, I'm working on myself every day, but I hope to God I always stay funny. I hope my friends always think I'm witty and smart and kind and hilarious. But the things that I need to help take me to another level, whether that's in discipline, whether that's in communication, whether that's in respect, whether that's in forgiveness, I can always get better at those things. And I don't need to leave who I am behind, but I can upgrade myself, as Beyonce would say, along the way. And we do that by looking at these habits and really asking ourselves, like, what are these things, habits, places that they don't serve us anymore? Where are there places where we just know that has run its course? I ain't supposed to be there anymore. But you keep coming back because it's in that comfortableness. You kind of denying that part of yourself is kind of picking those little leaves off and being like, see, I didn't need that. Well, when that plant comes back, you're going to be doing the same thing you were always doing. And why exactly is that? For me, another thing that I can get a lot better at is discipline. Because discipline makes you the creator of your future versus being stuck in the reruns of your past. I'm going to say that again, because when I was typing that, I was like, I got to write that down. I'm going to need to say that a lot. Discipline makes you the creator of your future versus being stuck in the reruns of your past. If you haven't done anything different in the last year, 5 years, 10 years, and you're over here disappointed that you're getting the same result and that you're not upgrading, that you're not updating yourself, that you're not getting where you want to be, whether that's in your financial goals or your fitness goals or your health goals or your spiritual goals, but nothing's changed, nothing's going to change until there's change. So until there's change, nothing's going to change. And really cutting yourself out of this belief of, well, it's not working. Maybe then it'll get better. Once it's working and things get better, then I'll get better. And it's like, no, that isn't how it works. Once you get better, then everything else starts to get better and to upgrade. But if you're sitting around waiting for you to step on that scale and have the number look the way you want, and then you'll start eating right and getting a trainer, doesn't that seem a little ridiculous? Doesn't that seem just a little ridiculous? It seems ridiculous in that aspect, but when we look at starting our dreams, whether that's starting a business, whether that is investing in ourselves, we wait for everything to line up perfectly. And then once it does that, we're like, okay, well, now I'm going to do it. Well, sadly, it's not going to line up for you until you do it for yourself, until you line up for yourself. And so one of the things I want to talk about tonight is 3 ways to get that whole thing, to get that whole root, that whole weed from the root out of the ground. And the first thing I want to talk about tonight is notice where you stop yourself and being honest with that. If you know, for whatever it is, whatever goal you have, start to find a pattern when you see yourself not doing it. What is it you're doing instead? Are you stuck on your phone? Do you suddenly have to do all of your laundry and your dishes? Do you have to go do that thing for that person? And you're not really doing them for yourself. Where can you find, even if it's just 10 minutes? And some of the stuff we have to do for our dreams is super uncomfortable. There are some of us out there that are building an online business and they're having to do cold calls. And they're like, I better go fold those clothes real quick. And then they just never end up doing it. What if you set yourself a 10-minute timer and say, you know what, this is super uncomfortable. I don't like this part of this growth, but I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. Or put a reward for something for yourself at the end. But if you're able to identify where you stop yourself, then you can make it a game so that you can keep going. Because there are parts of our business where, whether it's a business or whether it's a health goal, spiritual goal, even, I swear to God, I was meditating once. I had worked on meditating, and I had worked with this gentleman named Alejo, and he would talk about kind of standing in like this strong horse stance. And he was like, if you can count to 21 without ever thinking about anything in between, you're on your way. Well, I never made past 7 because there's always stuff in my mind, but I quit doing it because I wasn't very good at it. And I kept getting frustrated night after night, not getting past 7. Sometimes I'd get to 2. I can't count to 3 without thinking another thought in between. It's like, come on, sister, save yourself. Help yourself out here. Please help yourself out. So notice where you're stopping yourself. Notice where you're going and saying like, oh, I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z for my dreams and my goals. I haven't done that lately. Why is that? Because that answer might be because you're avoiding it, because it's uncomfortable, because you're sitting there going, does this even matter? Can I even change my freaking life? Does this matter? Yes, girl. Yes, it matters. Everything matters. You know, one of the things that my dad used to tell me when I was growing up is he said, failure isn't one cataclysmic event. It's not one big where it's like this thing happens and then it's over. It's these little tiny failures every day that we might not even notice are making any difference. And then we get 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 5 years down the road, and we go, dang, that's tough to come back from. But on the flip side, success isn't one big event either. We think that of success, and I don't know if it's because of movies, social media, but we think of success as this one moment where it's like, oh my God, it's happening. But it isn't like that. It may look like that when you're on your screen and you're identifying it, but it is all of these tiny little daily disciplines that they are doing behind the scenes and building themselves up. And if they can do it, we can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. We're doing this together. The other thing that I want to talk about tonight in that second point is the inconvenience factor. And what is that? The inconvenience factor is like, hey, my car's about to be on E, but I'm late to work. I don't have the 10 minutes to stop. And you have to ask yourself like, well, do I have 4 hours if I were to break down on the interstate and then be late to work, be stressed out as hell, be worried somebody's going to hit my car, then I got to Uber, then I got to tow, then I got to go to the gas station to then move this here. That took way longer than filling up your car. And asking yourself, where am I doing that in different areas of my life? Where am I saying like, this is a huge one for me right now as my body's recovering postpartum. I'm like, oh, I don't really have the time to be working out right now. And then I hold my son for 5 minutes and I feel like my back is going to snap in half. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to keep feeling this way for the rest of your ever God-loving life? Or can you start to bet on yourself? Like, oh, I don't have time to make a healthy breakfast, so I'm going to sit in a McDonald's line, which probably will take you the same amount of time it would take you to make a healthy breakfast. But what's the end goal there of making that cheap, easy decision? Not just in breakfast, but what cheap, easy decisions are you making that kind of gets you out of the things quicker? And where can you make that hearty, healthy decision that's going to create the future that you're looking for, the future that you're proud of? And thinking that things have to line up to be perfect to start. I am a huge, probably annoying person in this regard. I'm the total, oh, let me start on Monday. Oh, it's the first of the month. I can start then. Let me wait till everything lines up for me and then it's going to work. It's not going to work. You know, even just recently having a baby and listening to some of my friends who were thinking about having kids, and they're like, I'm just waiting for the perfect time. And before I was pregnant, I was thinking that there was a perfect time. And people like my mom would say, there's no perfect time to have a baby. And now that I have a baby, I know that to be exactly true. We are designed to make it work. And especially as women, we're designed to make a lot work. And we can make a lot work at once when we're on our own team. When we believe in ourselves and we're on our own team, we got 15 things going on and we can do them all. That's the magic of women. Women, they're creators innately. And if they got to make something happen, they will. That's the magic that's in us that I think sometimes we forget so much, is that when we want it to work, it will. And so many times it's hard for us to sit down and kind of like understand when it's not working, that maybe deep down we don't want it to work, or we don't believe it's going to work. You know, when I look at this season of life that I'm in right now and starting a business, and I look at the moments of myself where I'm not giving it 100%, if I'm really honest with myself and I ask myself, hey, we got to kind of talk about this, it's because I don't actually believe that I can make it work. I don't actually believe that I can create something different than this current reality. And when I forget those things, I don't work on it like I can. But when I believe that I can do anything, I do. And people are so much like that. And I think women especially are like that. The other thing I want to talk about, the third point of kind of getting that whole weed out, is asking yourself, is that true of me anymore? Is there truth in this? Because so many times our brains are just rattling and they're just going and they're just kind of dumping things into us, like they're trying to keep us alive and trying to keep us kind of safe and not too much stress and all of that stuff. But I can find myself when I have little thoughts go into my mind about like, hey, you probably can't pull this off. Who do you think you are? You're not really good enough to do this. I have to stop and take a pause and say, is that true? Does that hold truth and value for me? Because a lot of times with those self-limiting beliefs that I have, I'm not asking if they're true, because some of them I've been saying to myself for 20 years. But if I stop and say like, hey, where's the value in that? Where's the truth in that? I realize that it's empty and that there's nothing there. And so ask yourself that. Notice where you're stopping yourself. Think about the inconvenience factor and that success isn't one big event. And honestly, neither is failure. And even if it feels like this thing happened and it was completely ruined, it isn't. You can always start again. And so many times we acknowledge the roots of us that need that we don't acknowledge the roots of us that need tending to. We get stuck on the fruit, or kind of like that end result. Like we look at ourselves as almost like these fruit bearing plants that are bearing fruit all the time. Like they have to be performing all the time. And that's what makes it worth it, is that we are constantly producing things for the world to see and do and be a part of. And I just want to remind you that that is not always true. And also, I'm all about setting some goals and striving for something and being a part of that. But I want to ask you, how many of you are setting your goals, or how many of you have written in there that I want to live a full, happy life? Because so many times we're so busy trying to get to that next sales goal, that next mile marker, that next to do, that next conquering, that we forget. Am I prioritizing living a happy and full life? Am I prioritizing that for my family, for my friends? Am I showing up in a space that cultivates them to take a deep breath and to be happy? Or do I walk into the room and everyone's like, they kind of collapse within themselves because you're up to something? I want us to also just think about, in this time, if we were gardeners, which I will tell you, I got plants all over this house and I'm not allowed to water any of them. Not a single plant in this whole house. And one of them is this huge succulent that I got as a little baby plant, and she is huge. But I'm not allowed to water her because I might kill her. So for those of you that I'm about to tell gardening stuff to, if you're like, that's not how you do it, well, I'll let you know. I don't know how you do it because I'm not allowed to do it, because I'm going to ruin the things in my house. But asking yourselves, in terms of your mind and your heart and your soul, what part of us needs tending to? What part of our garden, mind and our soul and our heart, what do we need to weed out? And also, here's another big one. What's already dead that I need to cut out from my life? Kind of like a spring cleaning of the soul, if you will. Every spring, before I had this baby, I would go through some of our sage, some of my yarrow plants, and I would cut out all of the dead stuff because the new stuff can't grow as big and as great and as amazing as it's going to be. And some of that dead stuff is part of our identity. It's part of who we were. You know, when I was in network marketing, when I got into that in 2009, I held on to that for so long as a piece of who I was, as if it was the best part of who I was, forgetting that that was just a thing. I was the great thing. The thing I was doing was pretty cool, but I was cool too. And we forget about that, especially the things that fall apart in our lives that we weren't expecting them to. We think, oh my God, that is the job. That is the person. That is the thing. And because of that, I was great. And yeah, those things can give value to you. But sis, the reason you were in them is because you too were just as great and just as incredible and just as amazing and just as deserving and just as capable to start this next project, to start this next thing, to start this new journey, to say yes, to bet on yourself. And what is that going to look like as we count down from 2024 into 2025? I'm going to post this in the comments, but there is the gentleman, his name is Alan Watts. And there was a video that I have always loved it from him. And it's a little 4-minute video, but what he's talking about in there is that as humans, we kind of put ourselves into like these tiered systems. Like you got to get through first grade, second grade, third grade. And then you get out and then you've got to go to college and then you've got to get this degree. And then you've got to get this job. And then once you get that job, you got to get married. Then you got to have kids. And all this time, like this thing is coming, but you got to keep climbing and doing and climbing and doing and kind of keep going. But what he says at the end, I love so much, is he said, we've cheated ourselves the whole way along because we thought of life as a journey with a serious purpose that we had to get to the end, whatever that end is, whether that's heaven, whatever it is. But we have missed the point. Life is a musical thing, and we were supposed to live and to dance while the music was being played. And so I ask you tonight, what can you start going for? Start betting on yourself. Start going for you. You absolutely have got this. But get them weeds out of there and dig your roots deep, because we are not always in a fruit-bearing season. You do not reap in the same season that you plant. Could you imagine putting a seed in the ground, a little seed in here, and being like, come on? We would not do that to a plant. We would not do that to a child. We would not do that to a dog. We wouldn't do that to anybody. Yet we somehow find that it's okay to do that to ourselves. We're starting something brand new. People are like, are you rich yet? No. Okay, I just put the seed in the ground. You're not going to get there yet overnight. And know that for yourself. Know that for yourself. And know that when you start going for it, you start betting on you, there is dirt over that seed for a while, because it doesn't grow out of the ground first. It grows down. And understand that as you're doing your daily disciplines and it doesn't look like anything's changing yet, trust me, it will. The deeper the roots, the taller the trunk. If you were to look at the roots of grass compared to a tree, it would be astounding. You would never compare, you would never think that. You can't grow the size of an oak tree with the roots of sod. So if it's taken you a little bit longer to get it together, just keep watering yourself. Keep reading those books. Keep getting around people that believe in you. I said this on my podcast last week when I was talking about this book. I've read this book a lot, as I have seen. It's nice and thick now. And it always finds me exactly where I'm supposed to be. So if you have people where you're like, I don't have anyone, you get on a podcast. You reach out to me. You read a book. You get outside. You start giving yourself that time for your dreams to start showing up for you. And again, if you're not seeing anything yet, roots grow down so your success can grow up. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to you soon.